what I suggest is that in our own time, we have inverted this pyramid so that the left hemisphere's value is at the top, that of utility, and the other ones are said to be simply in service to utility. That is the vision of the materialist reductionists, who until recently have held the floor in the universities. That, thank goodness, is changing. There is a wonderful move afoot I see in philosophy, I see in biology, that people see that this very simplistic, mechanistic vision is gone. It's over. It just doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, thank you for all that. That was intriguing. I'd been saying for some time that we were dealing with basically a suicidal culture that was running in overdrive down into those patterns. So I'm going to deflect us from getting too much into that. But your enumeration there of the hierarchy of values gets into Jonathan's point about values versus value. And is there some structure to the organization of first principles and first values? Like the core of the work that I'm doing at the French of Wisdom is that enumerating first principles and first values from a perspective of continuity with evolution itself, so that there are some values which are periphery, which occur locally, and then there are other values which are so core that we can actually say that we share them with like animals and that we share them perhaps with cells, right? The value pre-exists us, then there's a continuity of value that we participate in. And so things like harmony, right? Like harmony is expressed very early in physics, where you either get some things work or do not work. And if you think about multicellular organisms or complex organisms, a lot of what's occurring there is complex systems of integrous, harmonious things. Humans start to use speech, they start to try to name values, and you get something like justice or fairness as a continuation of this dimension of So that's some of the thing we're doing there. And what emerges is that there's a paucity of language of evaluation in our culture. So this is a point Charles Taylor makes. He talks about languages of strong evaluation being the core of what holds a culture together. And that means a language of shared value. We talk about a universal grammar of value is absent. We can kind of have a grammar to talk about mathematics and science and all of these other things, but when we get together and we try to have a conversation about value, our tongues are tied. And especially if we move beyond our own culture. So there's this need to create some new languages of value, I think.
How much do you think that depends on the level at which one is talking about value? And I've sort of set up a kind of an idea of certain values, such as beauty, goodness, and truth. And it would almost make no sense to say up to a point about these things. We just do think beauty is good. We do think goodness is good. We do think that truth is good. It's almost a tautology. But if you start talking about the values that we hold as a society, and one may go back to the call of the French Revolution, liberté, égalité, fraternité, and these sound like a very good start. But immediately one finds oneself, and this is where one might get tongue-tied and there might be conflict, but what exactly do we mean by these things, and in what context, and how much, and for whom? So liberty is, on the face of it, highly desirable, and I certainly wouldn't admire a culture in which there was no liberty. But obviously, utterly untrammeled liberty is anarchy, and restraints and constraints within reason are very important, and we, as a mature society, is able to balance those things. And it's true of equality and fraternity. What exactly does one mean by them? Are they always necessarily good in all contexts, or do we have to finesse them? And I think that's what I would think is the difficulty about values themselves. Perhaps the only way in which one can resurrect a good sense of values is, in fact, by looking at societies that have been stable for a long time and produced that harmony that you, thank you for mentioning that, because I think it's terribly important. And it's not only a very important idea in physics, but also, as you point out, in biology. And also, of course, it was foundational in Greek thinking, you know, from Pythagoras onwards.
And it's one of those things you can see, like it's a, you can see
yes,
it.
and
Like
you can hear it.
it's one of the problems.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a remarkable, it suffuses. I remember this quote by Whitehead again, where he says, you know, the circle haunts the universe like a ghost. And what he was talking about was just the presence of universals amongst the flux.
Yes.
Right? And so harmony,
Yes.
harmony kind of haunts evolution at all stages, and we yearn for it. Like in our societies, we want harmony, and
Yes.
so it's interesting that.
And what harmony points out is that it's all in relations. It's not unison, it's relations between things, but beautiful and generous relations that work together to produce only good and beautiful sound. So, you know, we talk about other species and humans, and you talked about how harmony seems to be very much a kind of human conception. I think you hinted that. At any rate, I hope I'm not misquoting you. But it is also true that, you know, birds sing, but in essence they sing competitively. But only humans can sing in harmony and attune their voices to one another. So this is, I mean, there's so much that one can regret about humanity. But the trouble with this is that it leads to a kind of disparagement of everything that humanity can be. And we need to preserve the ideal of what a human being and a human life and a human society can be, what its meaning is, at the same time as being highly critical of many of the things that it's now interpreted as involving. And this comes down to my basic point, and the reason I wrote The Matter with Things, is that we no longer understand what a human being is, what the world is, and what we're here in it for.
Right, and that's very unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate.
And I believe in the Master and Emissary, you cited that research that the vocal cords were more developed before the language centers. So the very first humans communicated mostly through song, basically, that there was this kind of Eden state where there was this harmonic vocalization of somewhat sapient, you know, bipedal creatures who were basically singing together before they were speaking, and that the function of language, to be denotative and descriptive, piggybacked on the use of the vocal cords for basically harmony.
Yes. Well, you know, I mean, this is I have to rely here quite a lot on anthropologists, but there is a prominent school of anthropologists who certainly believe this, Stephen Meithen being one of the best known exponents of it. But what I think is nice is that there is very good, if you like, anatomical reasons for believing that this is the case, and from the examination of animals, that their ability to vocalize and so on, the nature of their skulls and their rib cages, too much to explain now, but it's in The Master and His Hemisphere. But what I love about it is that it inverts this assumption that of course, all the business is done with language, and music is just some frivolous exaptation of language. But actually, it turns out that the science is on the side that music comes first, and that language is a useful exaptation of music.